Still, I would like questions, so if you want. Okay. Let's go to the last but not least. We will hear from Ziyad, who is member of the Palestinian Legislative Council, where he heads the legal committee. And I also would like to remind that he is a Palestinian co-editor of Palestine Israel Journal.
And my counterpart is Danny Bartel. And it's true that any conflict needs two sides. And any solution needs also two sides. And there could be partners. I think the question here should be also if there is a wish for a solution. And you can find a partner, but each one has his own conditions for the contract, and therefore the contract will not be signed at the end, or even will not be considered at all. So what you need is, first of all, to ask the question, is there a will? If there is a will, there will be a partnership. As you know, in any solution for any conflict, you need the two parties of the conflict to be tired or to become tired from the conflict, and to feel that they will benefit from the solution of the conflict, and that they have the wish to end the conflict. I will come back to these 3 points later in my very short presentation. But if we look around and try to see what is the situation on both sides, the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, I think it's disengaging itself from any real move towards a solution. And I see that we have been in the past so much close to the solution, and that what's happening now on the ground, unfortunately, is just pushing us far from the solution. I think that the argument that there is no partner, became loudly heard during the last 3 years, during the siege on Arafat, to discredit Arafat and to justify unilateral steps. Because if you don't have a partner, then you have to do the job yourself, because you don't have anyone else to work together with you. I want to link this approach with some change in the terminology of the conflict, which we heard in the late 90s, for example. While during the negotiations, we were talking about expanding Jewish settlements in the Palestinian occupied territories, the Americans and the Israelis insisted that we should not call them expanding settlements or settlement activities, but let us call them unilateral steps. And then there was a demand from both sides to refrain from unilateral steps, which for the Palestinians meant that it is a call for the Israelis to stop or freeze the settlement activities. Of course, this did not work. During the last 4 years, from the beginning of the Intifada, anyone who has the access to go around in the West Bank, he will see that the size of the settlements in the West Bank doubled, and even more than doubled. It could have been tripled during these 3-4 years. That everybody was busy speaking about the Intifada, speaking about terror, speaking about suicide attacks, speaking about assassinations, and the machine, the huge machine of building in the Jewish settlements, expanding the Jewish settlements, constructing highways, a network of highways in the West Bank to integrate all the Jewish settlements to Israel was intensifying. And anyone who has eyes in his face, and he can see very clearly that these settlement activities are not done by chance or accident, that there are maps ready, and all these activities are done according to the maps, which the maps define where are the borders which Israel wants. And of course, these borders which Israel wants, which the settlements are imposing on the ground, they can never ever be accepted by the Palestinians. And this by itself makes the solution all the time getting far from our hands and becoming impossible. We hear now questions about Abu Mazen. And I read, I think yesterday, an article by Dan Shiftan about Abu Mazen as a partner or not a partner. I guess some of you may have read that article. There are many Israelis who think the same way about Abu Mazen. And I think maybe there are, and if not, they will be injected with information, with false information, with a campaign which will make them at the end deal with Abu Mazen the same way they dealt with Arafat. And those who push in this direction will try to organize a character assassination against Abu Mazen, exactly the way it was done against Arafat. Their aim is to discredit any Palestinian who is ready to make any agreement or any deal with the Israelis, and to justify the policy of Israel and the Palestinian territories. I don't think that Sharon has changed his skin. I think, and I may go much further than that. I think that Sharon may have the same complex which Arafat had. I think Arafat wanted a solution which exactly goes to every details that he can accept for himself. Otherwise, you don't want to be considered historically as someone who gave in or compromised on the Palestinian rights. And I think Sharon has the same complex. And I don't see any chance that Sharon will be able at any stage to make peace. He will not be the goal. He will not change his ideology. He tries to gain time. He tries to show that he is ready for a compromise, that he can be flexible, he can make, as he calls, painful concessions, but at the same time, he is moving towards accomplishing what he wanted all the time to accomplish. Now, what makes it difficult for the Israelis in the future is the growing power and influence of the settlers in the internal Israeli politics. You have now some Knesset members from the Jewish settlements in Gaza and the West Bank. You have to deal, and you have to take into account the electoral power of the settlers in any elections in the future. And this power is growing. The power of the settlers and their influence on the internal Israeli politics is growing. And I think this also goes in the direction that is disengaging us and making us far from reaching a solution. I'm sorry if I am making some of you depressed or if I am pessimistic in my general look, but I'll tell you how I feel, how the average Palestinian feels. And when we hear the Israelis talking and we see what they are doing, we see the huge gap between what is done on the ground and what we hear from the Israeli leaders. And we see that the peace camp in Israel is scattered, is destroyed. Of course, I don't deny that we caused a lot of damage, the image of the peace camp in Israel, by some of our activities against the Israeli civilians in Israel, but they are becoming all the time weaker, and the extremists and the fanatics are becoming stronger. What about our fanatics? I think we are still in the position or the stage where we are still able to contain our fanatics and to control them. And I think if there will be no real effort, which will disappoint all the pessimists, if there will not be a real effort in the very near future to change the direction of events, I'm afraid that it is a lost case. I must say that if there will be a real intention not to make this solution, this conflict, a permanent conflict, there must be parallel steps by both sides to de-escalate the situation and to bring people back to their sense. We are, both of us, are so much emotionally involved in the conflict. Even sometimes we take it in a personal manner. We want to hurt you because you are hurting us. We want to cause you damage because you kill us. We want to kill you because you are killing us. Some people even talk about numbers, how many Palestinians are killed, how many Jews are killed. It's an awful situation. What is needed is really parallel steps from both sides. I think that the first stage of the roadmap could provide such measures to be taken by both sides. If this doesn't take place in the near future, if all the efforts within the next year fail, I am afraid that we will lose the chance for any solution. And we will face a reality that this conflict will go on and on and on, and will not be able to get out of it until maybe there will be a lot of destruction and suffering, until there will be a new generation which will develop a new concept for things like sovereignty, like borders, like coexistence. Because in the standard concepts of these words, I don't think that it will be practical to speak about a solution. I don't think that the option of the two states is practical, is realistic, even these days. I live in the West Bank. I live in Israeli, which is one of the neighborhoods of Jerusalem. I'm a member of parliament which was elected to represent Jerusalem in the Palestinian parliament. I'm not allowed to go to East Jerusalem to see my constituency. If I want to go to Ramallah, I have to drive about 50 kilometers instead of 15 kilometers to get to Ramallah. I travel a lot in the West Bank, and I see the changes, the geographic and physical changes which are taking place on the ground. And this makes me every day more convinced that the solution, the two-state solution, is becoming unrealistic and impossible. Again, I say that this generation may not be able to solve this conflict. With a new generation, with the new concepts, with a new approach, with very painful lessons from the sufferings of this conflict, maybe they will be more able and more capable to try to find a solution and live together. Thank you.